If the timeline you're clinging to is the very thing keeping your miracle at bay? Right now, Saturn, the ruler of time and karma, is dissolving and aligning and coming into conjunction with Neptune, the dreamer, the mystic, the God frequency of divine potential. And it's all happening inside of Gene Key 55, the code of freedom. This isn't just a conversation today about astrology or the gene keys. This is a conversation about the cosmic mutation, about the evolution of the human species. And we are in the very first contractions of the quantum birth of the new human being. So let's talk about what this means for you today, for your vision, for your leap, and why now. You may have been feeling like some things are coming to the surface. You may have been noticing patterns and feelings and thoughts and ideas and situations that are just no longer serving. So, if you're new around here, make sure you hit the subscribe button, you give this video a thumbs up, and you share it with anyone that may resonate. I am Ahaumna Amaya, and I have been reading the stars for as long as I have been here. And I specifically am going to be talking to you today based on astronomical precision. What I mean by that is the conversations, the alignments, the positions of the planets that I'm going to be talking to you about today are the astronomical positions. So if you went outside with your little sky scanner app on your smartphone and you pointed it up to the sky, you would see where the planets physically, anatomically, were in the constellational map. And I make that distinction very clear because a lot of times there is a lot of confusion because what most people use as tropical astrology is not astronomically precise. It is one of many astrological systems. It's not the one that I use because I am an astronomer at heart. I look to the sky, into the stars for the wisdom that I hold in this realm. And to me, I can't then look up to the sky and see the position of a star being somewhere and then look at a tropical chart and it tell me it's 28 degrees in a different position from there. So we're talking about the correct astronomical placement of these planets at this time. What we're going to dive into today is first, I want to just talk about Saturn and Neptune in maybe a way that is illuminating to some parts of you, maybe in a way that gives you like a little bit of a breath, because especially Saturn gets a bad rap. There have been, for really hundreds of years, people who believe that Saturn is a malefic planet. And I don't subscribe to those beliefs about Saturn, mainly because I understand the deeper esoteric inversions and what happened to Saturn that made Saturn come in and take on this role of being the Lord of Karma. And karma is another way of saying the law of cause effect. What goes around comes around. And karma is one path that you can be walking on here in this life. And that path is one where you're creating and generating and processing and integrating karma until you make a leap in your consciousness and you come into alignment with your destiny, the path of God, the path of divine alignment, and the path where you no longer have choice. And that is a leap that not everyone will make in this life or the next life or the next life, because people and humans and consciousness really enjoys free will and choice. And that has manifested as karma, because as you make choices, those choices have ripple effects. Those ripple effects come back to you. And when you are in your path of destiny, for anyone who has made that shift in this life or had moments where you felt destiny really coming through you, you know you don't have a choice. God is leading your energy, call it the universe, call it the cosmos, call it spirit, whatever word resonates with you. I am a non religious, non dogmatic presenter of what I have come to realize is not the only truth, because I don't actually believe there is one truth. I feel that all ideas, all beliefs, they are here, they exist, they're alive. So, in some way, all thoughts, all idea is truth. There are things that are mechanical And mechanical means like 2 plus 2, we all know no matter where you're at on the planet equals 4. That is a mechanical mathematical equation. We all know that there are certain mechanical structures that an architect needs to do to build a skyscraper, right? Engineering, things like this. This is mechanical. There is no degree of separation in mechanics. 2 plus 2 is always going to be 4 no matter where you go on the planet. So I like to work in the world of mechanics and math and precision in that way because it allows us to see things a little bit more clearly in a world where there's relative truth, where there are so many different ideas and philosophies and beliefs and ways of living. And I don't subscribe to a life where I want to tell any person that the way they're living is wrong or false or not real or not true because that doesn't unite us, that creates separation. And we're really wanting in this life to move into that unified field, to make that upshift. And this is not something that has not come with a tremendous amount of trial and error and struggle and strife and deep moments with self to come into this embodiment. So, whilst I'm going to be sharing with you ideas, I like to go to the mathematics, the mechanics, to have some sense of precision that cannot be denied by any different varying thoughts or ideas or beliefs because it's simply numbers, math, geometry, right? Okay. So, when we look at Saturn, and there have been beliefs and ideas about Saturn being this malefic planet. When you have certain Saturn placements in your charts, there are some astrologers that will go like gasp and potentially think that your life is going to be really challenging or really hard. And it's not to say that it's not. It's not to say that Saturn does not bring very real challenge into your life. And anyone who's over 30 years old knows that to be truth because you've lived through your first Saturn return around that 28, 29, 30-year period where life really squeezes you. And the way I like to describe this to my clients when I'm doing readings with people is that Saturn is like this towel that's being dipped into a bucket of water. And our life is the, or rather, yeah, we are like a towel that's being dipped into a bucket of water. And Saturn comes and pulls us out of that water and wrings us out because that water is density. That water are ideas and thoughts and beliefs and life paths and journeys that may not have been our highest calling, our true path in this life. They could be karmas that we've been processing and integrating. So Saturn really has been known as the ruler of karma because he comes and he wrings out our life. And that wringing could be losing a job, having a sudden death, having a sudden change in your relationship, having a sudden change in your finances. It's often sudden changes. Like I always share the story of when I went through the first passing of my Saturn return. So the first time Saturn came into exact conjunction with my natal Saturn back in my 20s. I ended a relationship that morning, like he broke up with me. I went to work that day. I was fired at work that day. And then I came home from work that day and there was an eviction notice on my door. Like all three things. And I was just like, at that moment, I realized, okay, I have to take all this pressure that I've been feeling leading up to this moment with Saturn seriously because there's change that Saturn is trying to make in my life. And right now I'm resisting it. So I need to learn how to work with Saturn instead of resisting the change. Now, it turned out that the eviction notice was like a fluke, mainly because the check that we had sent, like the check got lost in the mail. And so we didn't end up getting actually evicted, my roommate and I at the time. However, it was just like, it was almost like Saturn did it, like probably lost the check in the mail just so that I could have this three. Because to me, when things happen in threes, I listen. And that was the start of really massive changes in my life at that time. When Saturn comes in, it initiates these massive changes, and those changes are not always comfortable. We have a lot of collective narratives and stories that people don't change. So then, when the planet of change and transformation comes in and starts radically pressuring you to change, you have to face these very deep ingrained mimetic overlays, meaning collective mental programs that are not necessarily our organic intelligence. Because our organic intelligence is that which comes natural to us. And our organic intelligence says things always change. We have seasons, we have change, we have literally every day the earth is rotating around, the moon is rotating, the sun, the planets, everything is rotating. It's constantly changing. There's constant movement. If we go to a quantum physics understanding of atoms are vibrating in empty space, they're constant movement. So change is really actually fundamentally one of the only organic truths. Yet we have these mimetic beliefs, these mental body beliefs and overlays that say people don't change. So then you have this planet of change come in, and you have been ingrained for the past 28 something years of your life up until your first Saturn return that people don't change. And now, boom, you've got to make these massive changes and your life starts falling apart and your health gets tricky and your relationships, like all this shit just comes to the surface all at once. And you're like, what is happening to me? What is happening to me? And I'm saying that very specifically, what is happening to me? Because that is the base consciousness that most of humanity has been operating in, the victim. Why is this happening to me? And this is very important because it's going to lead us into this discussion of what's happening with the 55th gene at this time, whose shadow is victimization. So Saturn has been thought of as this overlord that does all these things to you and that makes your path very hard and all of this shit. And because I don't subscribe to being a victim here, and because at that time in my journey, when Saturn first went through my retrograde over a decade ago, and I was like in the shit, I found a mentor at the time who really understood the cosmos in a unique way. And I had all these people coming in to reflect back to me that maybe what we believed about Saturn was not the whole story. And I decided to do a 40-day mantra discipline with the Saturn Sanskrit mantra, one of the planetary healing mantras. And I'll drop it in the description below this video for anyone who may feel guided to do a mantra practice with it. I did a 40-day with this mantra practice, and all of this shit started coming out of me. Holy cow, what was processing and integrating, and the intensity of that moment, that some days I would sit in this mantra and I would be dropping to my knees, like, don't even know how to describe it. It's like you're stuck in quicksand and you're like trying to get out of quicksand, but the quicksand is just pulling you deeper. And I was like in the mantra, and it was so much was coming up, and I was trying to just get out of this mantra, like trying to stop doing this practice because it was bringing so much to the surface. Yet the quicksand in this moment was my soul that was like, no, we have to go through this. And by the end of that journey and the initiations that came, the second time Saturn came into exact conjunction with my natal Saturn. So in a return, the planets go through retrograde. So they move forward a few degrees, and then they come back a few degrees, and then they move forward a little bit more, and then they come back a little bit more. So there are ebbs and flows, even speaking to this dynamic of change, even within a big outer planet transit. There are periods that are a little bit lighter and you get a little bit of hope back. And then there's periods where you're like, boom, pulled into the tar. So the second time Saturn came into that conjunction, which was about a year later, and a lot of things happened in that year. I literally donated everything I owned, living in my car, everything about me changed in that year as I fully surrendered to Saturn working my life and bringing me back into alignment with God's plan. And the second passing, I was now in Hawaii, and Hawaii was like this dream place that I'd always wanted to go to. I had made the first like 5 figures in my business after basically not charging anything. So it was like the first moment of success in my business. I was in Hawaii. I was at this ancient Hawaiian magic school receiving body work. It was like lomi lomi and acupuncture and cupping and energy work on this beautiful property with all these magical fairies around. There's actually probably a YouTube video on my page from that moment in time. I'll see if I can dig it up because it was just so magical. What was transpiring was just so epic. And that was when I realized, okay, there is a higher order and a higher nature, a benevolence inside of Saturn when we get through that tar and we allow ourselves to no longer buy into the beliefs that things are inherently all good or all bad, or even buying into the beliefs of good, bad, wrong to begin with, and starting to realize that there is a spectrum of consciousness that everything can play on. Everything can go into anger and destruction, and everything can go into bliss and ecstasy. And neither end of that spectrum is inherently good, bad, right, or wrong. It just is. Once I had that awareness, my orientation around who Saturn is and how Saturn works with us was radically transformed. And that then went forward with me for 10 years of working with people going through their Saturn return, which is something I don't really do anymore today. That being said, I did it with a lot of people, hundreds of people going through their Saturn return, helping them to make these shifts and watching their lives completely up level and be transformed. And I started to realize that yes, Saturn is the ruler of karma. What it really is, though, is when you pull the karma off, when Saturn's rings dissolve, because the rings around Saturn are the karma. It is this inorganic material that has been put into your fields, right? Saturn's rings are not natural. We know this now. We also know that Saturn's rings are breaking down and dissolving. They're going to be gone in thousands of years. Whoever knows how long, maybe it's millions. I don't know. But we know, go look it up, that they are starting to disintegrate. They are starting to dissolve because they're not organic. They're not a natural part of Saturn. They were put into place, and we could go down a lot of different conspiracy holes around the planet that exploded. And I won't even go into that in this video, but you can go find someone else's channel that talks about that because that's not what we do here. However, it's not organic matter, right? And the moment that came in is when this record, this looping of karma came in, right? Where you loop and you just keep replaying the same shit over and over again, trying to pull yourself out and continue just getting pulled back in. And the patterns keep showing up and the relationship styles keep showing up and all the things. It's just repetitive, history repeating itself over and over. That's the karmic loop. That's not organic. That's not our true nature. That's not how nature moves. So when we pull away and we come out of that karmic, the planet of Saturn then rules divine time, divine ordination, and it is a ruler of timelines and time. So when we realize that there is a higher order, and Saturn is actually in those moments where it's like crunchy and it's wringing us out, it's actually trying to bring you back into alignment with divine time and with a higher order, with your divine path, with your destiny. Thank you, Saturn, for leading the way to a path of precision and grace and alignment with why I truly came here. And thank you for all of the intensity that you have brought into my world to purify me, to bring me back into wholeness, and to free me from any and every imprint that has been stuck in my fields for Lord only knows how long. I bow and honor your tenacity to be the fierce mama bear that protects my divination. Let that sink in for a moment. And if you've been struggling with Saturn, maybe go back 60 seconds and listen to that again and feel it. So that's Saturn, little backstory on Saturn to give us a whole picture. This is a deep dive today, right? The next outer planet that we are working with right now is Neptune. And Neptune is also sometimes doesn't get the best rap. And where Saturn makes things very physically hard, like it really impacts the physical realm because it is the ruler of timelines and the timeline that you're on. Neptune really impacts the mind and the mental body and the brain and the neurosystem and the nervous system. And because of that, it can sometimes not get the best rap. And that's because it can bring people into fantasy, into delusion, into mania, into schizophrenia, into the mental dis hyphen eases that we have on this planet at this time. And it wasn't until last year that I got my first real initiation with Neptune in a very visceral way where I was lucid and conscious and sober enough in my body, spiritually sober. Is what I mean by that, in my body, where I could see things clearly as they were happening from a higher perspective. Whereas when Neptune made transits with some of my other planets, it was much, much younger in my life when I was still a teen and didn't have the frontal lobes of my frontal cortex fully developed and was still like not very conscious. But last year, Neptune came into full conjunction with my North Node. And it was right after we led a planetary activation in Kauai that was sublime, is an understatement. It was ineffable. The frequency of oneness, the higher order that came through, and the embodied, visceral, cellular experience of being in a unified field, and how much bliss it is to be in that unified field was awakened inside of this vessel. And then I came out of that experience, came back into the reality, ate some food, and was like put into a intense several months of extreme panic, anxiety attacks, like manic thoughts. My thoughts were racing all over the place. And this wasn't the first time I've experienced something like this before. Being a walk in, I experienced that when I came into this body and had to like really work through this whole process. If you don't know my journey of being a walk in, there's videos on my channel about it. That being said, it wasn't the first time I experienced this kind of mental chaos before. And honestly, as someone who's lived through pretty extreme mental and physical chaos, I would say that mental chaos is far more challenging to navigate through than physical chaos. And that's because it starts to change and alter how you see yourself, how you see the world, and it brings with it tremendous amounts of fear. And that fear is both a biological fear that is natural and an inorganic fear that is being just amplified based on the intensity. And at that time, I was aware that this was Neptune coming into conjunction with my North Node. And I literally said to my partner, I was like on my knees, crying, sobbing. I was like, is this what the next several years of my life are going to be like with Neptune here? Because I don't think I can take this. And I decided that I was going to do what I always do. And I was going to start sitting down and praying and speaking and connecting intentionally to Neptune. Just like I did with Saturn during my Saturn return, I was going to do the same with Neptune. I was going to start to get to know who this planet was. And it was actually one of the ghost points. For those of you who don't know what the ghost points are, they are points on your meridian system. There are 13 points. They're on your body. They're a part of your meridians. And when these 13 points are activated, they eradicate and pull out anything that's not your authentic truth, anything that has been imprinted into your field, any trauma, any false belief, false identity, any spell, any curse, like all these things that get hooked into people's fields to keep them from being their true self, the ghost points eradicates. I have a lot of videos on my channel about the ghost points because I facilitate that work extensively. And I won't go into depth about this now. So if you're like, whoa, something in my body is like opening and feeling like ghost points, go to those videos on my page because there's something there. When your body feels really deeply called towards them, it's because they're opening in you and it's time to do that work. That being said, I bring it up because one of the ghost points is a point on the body that has been known for thousands of years to either take the person, when it's activated too much, into schizophrenia or into enlightenment. And I sat with that point and I sat with that awareness that I was taught by my mentor. And I sat with it. And I meditated on it and I contemplated it and I opened myself up to Neptune, because Neptune has been thought of can cause schizophrenia, it can cause delusions of grandeur, it can cause all these fantasies, it causes all this distortion in the mind. And I was like, but if enlightenment is the other side of schizophrenia, two sides of the same coin, then that means that maybe we have been also looking at Neptune from rose colored glasses, from a lens that was foggy and not fully clear, because we don't have enlightened masters walking around this earth interfacing with the majority of humanity, which means our interpretation of the planets has primarily come from the shadows of consciousness that we've had access to. And then glimmers of insights that come from people as they like tap in for moments to different streams of energy. At this time, I was writing a lot about what was happening because it was so monumental how these shifts were taking place. And I realized that Neptune was the divine mind. Neptune held within it the capacity for bliss and enlightenment and liberation, and your wildest dreams like are held there. And at this time, like my deeper calling was like activating inside of me and all these things were happening. And wow, the true divine ordination of Neptune was becoming revealed. And it's very important that we understand both of these planets that we're diving into from their more shadow archetypes and who they are, what they represent in their divinity. Because as they come together, which they are right now, I'm going to show you some charts in a moment here. They are probably about a degree or so away from each other. They have been coming closer and closer into conjunction. Really, I like to tell people, if you're very energetically sensitive, if you're an empath and you know it and you're tuned in and you feel things more deeply and you really feel energy, then typically you'll start to feel outer planet transits and conjunctions around 12 degrees of separation. That was back in January. For people that are not as energetically in tune or sensitive, and sensitivity can be a trauma response from feeling so much and having to become hyper vigilant and hyper alert, as well as it can be a gift from taking that and transforming it into a calling and a gift and a beautiful thing where it's no longer you're sensitive, it becomes you're in tune. For those that aren't necessarily that in tune, usually around 6 to 3 degrees of separation, you'll start to feel those transits, which was back in May. So if you look back to January and you were like, man, yeah, some things really started to come to the surface and like I was starting to move and feel like, oh, I got to start making some changes. And then May came around and you were like, whoa, things are now getting pretty heavy, pretty intense. Waves of emotion, patterns, ideas, stories, things that you thought you addressed and healed and integrated, now flooding to the surface, all the stuff coming forward. That, my friends, is because Neptune and Saturn are coming into conjunction and they have a very specific assignment. And that assignment is what brings us into the 55th gene. And if you're not familiar with the gene keys, go look it up. The book itself is by Richard Rudd. However, the genes themselves are a modernized version of the ancient wisdom of the I Ching. Our 55th gene is one I have a lot of experience with because my North Node is in the 55th gene. And it is the gene that holds the key to the evolution of humanity at this time. So when things evolve, genes mutate, and the genes mutate and the physical body starts to change to adapt to what is collectively needed. You could look at this in any species, and I'm one who resonates with the reality that simultaneously both evolution and God exist, right? It's not an either or. It's not, oh, evolution theory or God. It's all of it. And we evolve based on what's happening in not only the earth, but in the cosmos and the greater macro body of this planet. The 55th gene has been known that gene is going to go through the mutation first, and that mutation is going to birth a new human being. That new human being is going to have an evolved human genetic template. It's going to have an evolved energetic grid and energetic field that it runs, and it's going to have an evolved consciousness. And if you're watching this video, if you're not new to my world, or this video has shown up in your field, it's because you are already aware of this. You already have known that there's a great change that's coming to humanity, and you've likely been doing the work yourself. So thank you. Thank you for being here. That being said, the 55th gene is one of the only gene keys that only has two energetic frequencies. All the other of the 64 have three: the shadow, the gift, and the siddhi. So the shadow frequency is the frequency that's governed by fear. The shadow is currently what the human being, the species of this planet that is called humanity, has been primarily operating in the consciousness vibration of the shadows. So we have been predominantly a species that has been governed by the frequency of fear. Look around us. It's not hard to see that everywhere. The gift frequency is a leap in consciousness into a frequency that vibrates in resonance with love, with unity. And then the siddhi is another massive leap in consciousness that goes into the realms of the sublime, into divine love, into no longer just being unified here between human beings, but being connected into your multidimensional nature. The 55th gene has just a shadow, and the gift and the siddhi are the same. And that shadow is victimization, the victim consciousness. And the gift and siddhi are freedom. I have talked extensively for years now about the victim, perpetrator, rescuer, mimetic overlay, this imprinted identity, collective mind program that has run and driven humanity for a very long time. And that's a victim consciousness. That is, things are happening to me. And when you're in that drama loop, you are stuck in it. You are always going to be the victim in someone's story, the rescuer in someone's story, or the perpetrator in someone's story. And you just keep playing out this drama loop in every aspect of your life, including your inner world. When we go through a massive shift and we're going to leap into the frequency of the gift, more readily able to be embodied on the planet at a collective level, there are individuals that have elevated certain genes to the gift frequency. We've not made a leap in collective consciousness where the majority of human beings are resonating and vibrating in the gift frequency. And that is the missing key that is keeping us in the current matrix and paradigm of what we collectively co-create together, which has been war and more reasons to believe that we are victims. The 55th gene is going to go through the mutation first. And this has been known. You can go read about this online. You can go read about the significance. And the reason for that is because the 55th gene is innately linked to the Kundalini energy flows and the energy that rises up from the earth to reach for the divine. So it is in every species, there is a genetic sequence that activates to evolve that species forward. And for us, it's the 55th gene that activates the Kundalini. It activates the primal earth frequency to rise up and reach for consciousness. And in that rising, for anyone who's experienced your Kundalini in your body, whether momentarily or more consistently, you know that energy is driven for change. It changes not only how you see the world, it changes your biology, it changes your spiritual connection, it changes who you are at your core. And it changes you in a way that elevates your life Or it can also, if your body is not elementally stable, we're going to talk about that in a moment, it can make things really challenging for you because that energy has to go through the lens of the victim. Because humanity's collective Kundalini currents have been operating and vibrating in resonance with the victim consciousness. There are entire Facebook groups with hundreds of thousands of people in them talking about Kundalini energy and their Kundalini process, feeling victimized to it. I have assisted many human beings, thousands of people now, in their journey of understanding their energy and how energy moves through their body. And they'll come and they'll start to have some Kundalini, this thing that they've desired to have starts to happen for them. And 9 times out of 10, they come and they say, how do I make this stop? Because what it does is it moves through that victim frequency, because that's where the collective 55th gene has been, which has kept the Kundalini then inverted. And when it's inverted, it like back loops in and it makes everything really pressured in your body. And you then have to face all these parts of yourself that have been in this victim story. And that journey happening really quickly all at once is really challenging. It's really challenging. And we don't have currently on this planet elders like we have in other realms and other planets and other dimensions that understand this unique journey and how to prepare the body for it. So a lot of people have energetically deficient bodies, minerally, amino acid, protein, like everything is deficient. And they're now activating Kundalini currents that require a lot of efficiency and nourishment in your body. And it just all shit hits the fan. And then that victim story gets even louder. Let me screen share the chart here now. Just really quick. I want to just show you. This is going to be on July 20th, which is when, remember, astronomically, we have the exact conjunction, which, based on astronomical precision, will be at 4 degrees of Pisces. I'm going to show you a little PDF next. And this PDF is something that I created years and years ago before there were computer programs that calculated sidereal astrology. Oh, it's like tiny here. And we'll see when we have 4 degrees of Pisces right here, we're activating the 55th gene. Okay. So the 55th gene is what is being activated by Saturn and Neptune conjunction. This is the beginning of a 40-year process of genetic mutation. And what is going to happen is that the mutation is not necessarily going to happen in the way that people might think. It's going to happen through people literally giving birth to beings, to humans, to babies that, I don't know why I said it that way, that's alien brain, that have the 55th gene already mutated in their body. That's going to start happening around the end of 2026, and it will be fully 2027. Human beings that are born from 2027 and beyond are going to have the 55th gene activated and mutated in their body as the gift frequency. And all of the incredible people, adults that are doing the work right now are going to be birthing those human beings with the 55th gene mutated. So that by the time Pluto comes in and activates, I'm going to put this transit up here now, in 2067, we now have the transits on the outside, and this is July 5th, 2067. By the time Pluto comes to activate the 55th gene in 42 years, all of the humans that have not activated and mutated their 55th gene will have died. Not from any crazy thing. Like literally they would just be like, I'm 30, I'll be 38 soon. So I'm going to be 80 in 2067. Right. So anyone who's mostly 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. Like they're just going to have their natural death by then or something else. Who knows? That being said, even just biologically and naturally, they will no longer be on the planet. So by that time, by the time Pluto comes to the 55th gene in the 2060s, we will have no human beings on this planet that are resonating and living in victim consciousness. I know that feels like a really large, massive statement to make. I've made it. Come back in 42 years and let's see if it has materialized. I'm fairly confident that it will. That being said, let's take these transits off now here for a moment again and just come back to this discussion. What's happening right now for those of you that are really in it? I've been in it. This particular Saturn Neptune transit, for anyone that was born in 1987, possibly 1988, I would need to look and see maybe the beginning of 1988 and the end of 1987. Let's actually do this. Okay, we're going to do it really quick. Let's figure out the exact dates because I want to give some dates. I want to be exact. We are precise around here. So you're going to have to roll with me while we do this and maybe you can learn real time like how we play around. What I want to do is I want to find the timing for anyone that I'm going to go to my birth chart because I'm December 1987 and you see my north node is within the degrees. My north node is at the 55th gene. So there is a timing for everyone born around a certain time. Your north node is going to be within similar degrees of Pisces at the same time. Let's find out what those exact dates are. So let's say this is 1987, December 1987. It's at 1 degrees of Neptune, 1 degrees of Pisces. So that means we could go, the nodes are the only planets that move clockwise. We could go back basically 3 degrees and it still be in the 55th, and we could go forward 1 degree. So let's go back to 1987. Let's just go back to October, right? Just a few months back, just to see where we're at. October 1987, 5 degrees. Okay. So pretty much right after that. So we're going to probably say, let's go back to here. Let's get our exact degrees. I like precision, right? Mathematical precision. Okay. 5 degrees and 45 minutes is when we move from the 55th gene to the 37th gene. Okay. So we have until 0 degrees, 8 minutes, all the way to 5 degrees, 45. Precision, friends. This is why I'm obsessed with it. So technically, this is at 5:39. Okay, so October 10th, still, let's go back to the 7th. Transits. Pull them back up. 5:43. Okay, what are we at? 5 degrees 45. Oh, I realize it's not sharing with you this sheet. Let me make sure it's sharing with you the entire screen. There we go. So what we're looking at is the 55th. So we go to 5 degrees 45 minutes. So right here, we're at 5 degrees 43 still on October 7th. So really like the start of October 1987. And then we got to go forward to 1988. Let's go to February 7th to see when we're going to be at transits. Okay, so at this point, we've gone past it. Now it's into Aquarius. So we need to go back to January. It's a little window of people who are going through it right now. And there's a reason for that. 28 means really at the end of December. So it is basically from October through December of 1987. This transit and conjunction is happening where your north node is stationed and where you were born. Yep. So 0 degrees. Yep. So the 31st. So October, November, December 1987. If you are born in that period of time, like this body was, you've likely been feeling this a little bit more intensely. And that is because your vessel, your physical body, is literally going through the mutation first. And as you go through that mutation, it's going to ripple out to everyone around you. And it's going to continue this way. The way I like to describe it with activations and frequencies and how these shifts start to happen is they come in, and let me just put this out there. It is not necessarily, this doesn't mean you're better than anyone. It doesn't mean you're special. Literally, it's not. I would love to not be the first ones going through this because the process has been really fucking hard. That being said, it just simply is. It just simply is the constellation, the vehicle that energy can move through. And as you toss that stone into the water, it ripples out. So if you're in that window of October, the end of December, 1987, however, it's going to be within a few degrees of separation. So you probably can say we could stretch this because remember, people start to feel it. And I would say that really 1987, 1988 babies, this mutation is happening in you first because you're going to be the ones that are literally physically giving birth to the human beings that have the 55th gene intact at the higher frequencies. And you moving through the worlds are going to be in the vibrational space with others, and it's going to activate spontaneously Kundalini awakenings in people and frequency awakenings in people, and the genes are going to start to pop off. And it's going to be consistently going through this until that period of 2027 where the 55th gene has now mutated in enough people at the gift that we are giving birth to humans, to babies that will never go back into the 55th shadow again of victimization. And from there, the whole human template starts to flip and the species evolves into the gift and the city of freedom. We become a free species, a sovereign species, an energetically free species, free energy. Why this is such an important understanding. Because even if you weren't born in 1987 or 1988, this is happening for all of us. The Saturn Neptune transit is happening for all of us. It's going to happen in a different house of your chart, which means it's going to show up in a different part of your life, stronger than other parts of your life. And it's going to be using specific genes from your gene key that are almost like it's like the arrow, like the 55th gene is like the arrow and it's the direction that we're going into. But you have the bow and you have the string and you have everything, the parts of the bow and the string that pull that arrow back are different genes that your 55th gene is anchored through. And because this was getting really challenging in my own life, I turned to the stars and I started to see for me, my body, and this is not anyone else's body, it's just my body, 1, 14, and 9. Those are the three genes that this 55th gene was moving through. And when I went into those genes, I literally began, like I was sobbing my eyes out in the tub as I was going through them because it was exactly to the T where the victimization was coming up inside of me again. And y'all, I have worked extensively since I met my first mentor, and he brought A World Without Fear, a book by a man named John Jones, not my physical biological body, John Jones, but a different John Jones. And in that book, he talked about the victim, perpetrator, rescuer. And this was at the beginning of my Saturn return. So this was 10 years ago. And for 10 years, I've been actively, intentionally, consciously looking at my life and seeing where I still play into that drama loop to free myself from it. Maybe it's because the 55th gene is my north node and others will feel the same because we're leading this, not a fun evolution, but we're leading it. That being said, there are very few times that I really see that pattern show up in my life anymore because I've been very intentionally working on it consistently, diligently for years. And it was like flooding me. I was telling my partner, I was like, I don't feel like myself. Like, I don't know whose thoughts these are. Like, I don't know what's going on. I can't even track these parts of myself because normally I'll do parts in parts therapy and I'll find the different parts of me that are like feeling certain ways and I'll be able to bring it back into wholeness. And it doesn't help that I was doing a really intense parasite cleanse at the same time because I like to go hard. Transformation or nothing. Anyways, however, I was still not able to track these parts in a way that I normally am. that's what then brought me to all of this. I was like, okay, I got to go back to the planets. I got to go back to the stars because they never lie. They show the patterns, they show the map, they show the blueprint. And when I read 114 and 9, it was like, boom, I found the exact parts that were still plugged into that system, why they were doing what they were doing, and started to integrate them. And I started to add the proper amino acids and minerals back to my body that those genes, the 55th plus 114 and 9, needed in order to make the leap. And immediately, whoosh, things started to lighten up and shift, and frequency started coming back to my body. And I was like, oh, I feel like myself again. Oh, all the parts, I see them all clearly, and all the pieces of the puzzle. And now I can see, and now I've got realize what is actually happening. Now I realize like what is actually going on. Like we're not just in an outer planet conjunction. We are in a mutation of the human genome that is going to birth the future. I don't like it. Sometimes I just wish I could like seed things into your consciousness and help you to realize this is monumental, monumental. And so if you feel like it's monumental in your life, if you have been managing things and looking at things and bringing things up and feeling change and feeling transformation and also feeling parts of you that are not in alignment, it's because those parts are the parts that are still in the victimization frequency. And this period is about radically, there's no significance and no incidents that we're in the year of the snake, right? The shedding out quite viscerally of this victim program from our consciousness. That means for anyone who's activated your Kundalini in the victim consciousness that has been anchored in, you know that means you actually have to face and integrate the parts of you that have still been addicted to it, choosing it, claiming it, holding it. And if you've been working on yourself really diligently for the last decade or more, those parts are harder to track because they got really sneaky and found like the most unconscious recesses of your brain and your body and your spirit body to go and run and hide because they believe in death. The fear frequency believes in death. It's not immortal. I hope that there has been some like light bulb moments for you in this. And if you are in a process of really moving through things, there are ways that I could support you if you feel aligned with my field and the work that we're doing. We have the next round of the Ghost Points coming up, and we are starting on July 20th. We're doing Trinity 1 on July 20th because I was like, you know what? We are going to align with this frequency and we are going to use this energy because this is the time, this is the moment that we liberate ourselves. And the ghost points are the most effective and the oldest methodology on the planet for doing this work that's currently still existing. And I also then have a secondary opportunity where I'm doing readings. I don't often do chart readings for people anymore. I've read hundreds of charts and I've trained almost 20 people to do this work now. So I let them do it and I focus on the work that I'm called to do now. But this is like one of those moments where I get into the charts and I see the stars and I see the pieces and I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to tell everyone because once you have the map of the key of how this 55th unlocks for you, it's going to make it so much easier. And we're here for ease, friends. We're moving as we enter into these higher frequency. It is about ease. That victimization keeps us in the story of I have to suffer, I have to experience pain in order to feel alive. That's the victim talking. Or that's the perpetrator perpetrating yourself talking. Or that's the martyr, which is the savior complex, which is all part of the VPR story. It's all the drama loop. It's all the drama loop trying to keep playing itself out deep in the unconscious. To be the ones that are going through this mutation, this leap. This is the evolution of humanity. This is why we came here. As much as it's fun to go out and create businesses and build buildings and homes and buy cars and dress and ordain and create beautiful art and poetry and music and all those things add richness to our life, beauty to our life. None of those things are why we came here. We came here for the internal evolution of humanity. And we are in the midst of it. And it is not going to get easier if you continue to resist it. People will get dragged more deeply into the victim consciousness because it's going to be radically alive on the planet right now. And if you really spend like more than 5 minutes on social media, you will see that everywhere. Large collective movements of victims and large collective movements of perpetrators and large collective movements of rescuers and saviors running the ship because it's all bubbling to the surface. And then there needs to be the ones that are actively integrating and going through this mutation, freeing ourselves from it, literally becoming free. So if any of this has resonated with you, if you found some golden nuggets, share this video with your audience, share this video with your friends, tag anyone that would be resonant with it, drop a comment if you have any questions below, and I will leave the links to the next Ghost Point round. Again, that begins the 20th of July, and the last day to join is the 13th of July, as you need to have time to order your supplies. And then the one-on-one Saturn Neptune readings will also be below. Sending you so much love. Again, if you've just jumped in here, be sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel while you're here.